Go to Sanliurfa near the Turkey-Syria border and speak to TRT World's Obeyda Hito. Obeyda, what about the pictures that we're seeing in terms of personnel, in terms of how the whole system is working for the joint patrols? What's happening?
Well, this joint patrol started similar to the several other joint patrols that Turkey conducted with both Russia and the United States. The Turkish military vehicles entered from Turkey into Syria through an opening in the border wall. They met with the Russian military police on the Syrian side, and now they are patrolling the area between Tel Abyad and Ras Al Ain. It's not clear if the patrol is going to make it all the way to the Euphrates River. This region that is referred to as Ain al-Arab, it is in between Jarablus and Tel Abyad, and the patrol is going to be patrolling an area 10 kilometers away from the border, even though in the deal the YPG is supposed to pull out all the way to 30 kilometers away from the border. Over the last several weeks there have been instances where the YPG flag has actually reappeared near the border, so Turkey is going to be looking very closely to see if the YPG has pulled out any of its fortifications and weapons out of this area. Its fighters should be moving out of this area, and this is something that is going to be very important to the Turkish-Russian cooperation in northeast Syria, because they have also conducted patrols to the east of Ras Al Ain towards the city of Qamishli, and not all of the border areas have been patrolled yet. This is only the second patrol that they're conducting together in northeast Syria after Turkey launched Operation Peace Spring. The operation had been launched after an effort with the United States failed, a very similar effort to pull the YPG away from the border area. So it's going to be very critical for Turkey and Russia to be able to sort this out and to make sure that the security zone, the peace corridor, is going to be completely cleared from the YPG, so Turkey can start repatriating voluntarily Syrian refugees who want to return to these areas.
Obeyda, when the Americans started to withdraw from certain areas in northeastern Syria before Turkey's Operation Peace Spring, the YPG then invited the regime to come into some of those areas. And there was a deal done which involved Russia. So Russia talks to the YPG. Turkey, of course, doesn't speak to the terror group. So when you don't speak to a terror group, when you're confronted with them, you fire. And there's been fighting since the start of Operation Peace Spring on the 9th of October. But Russia's presence now and the fact that they have communications with the YPG, does that mean to you that probably there won't be any direct confrontations during these joint patrols if they do come across the YPG?
Well, Turkey has been very clear that they will not negotiate with terror groups. So as you mentioned and made very clear, it's most likely the Russians that are the ones that are communicating with these YPG elements, asking them to move away from the border. The presence of regime forces is also complicating the situation. There have been some mixed reports about the YPG actually simply changing their uniforms, taking off YPG regalia from the uniforms and putting on Syrian regime Ba'ath flags. So it's unclear exactly who it is that's going to be present in terms of Syrian nationals at the border. Russia is acting as the guarantor. Turkey is taking Russia's word and committing themselves to this process. This is not something that's happening in isolation. This is part of a larger diplomatic process that Turkey and Russia have been engaged in, especially with the Astana talks and then the Sochi agreements. So Turkey and Russia are investing in creating this relationship on the ground in northeast Syria and building that trust. So it's going to be critical for Russia to make sure that they can deliver on the promises that they made to Turkey. This area, Ain al-Arab, is very actually sensitive because it was a place where the Americans were very heavily present before they pulled their troops out. They had several major bases there. They pulled their troops out, but it wasn't clear whether or not they took the weapons out. And as we have seen in other areas that Turkey has entered, Ras Al Ain and Tel Abyad, the YPG had a plethora of weapons, different kinds of ammunitions, mortar shells, heavy mortar shells. These are all very advanced weapons for a kind of guerrilla militia, especially a terror group that has been identified, by, or is considered a terror group by several international bodies and countries. So it's going to be very critical that the Russians can commit to their promises and to make sure that the YPG hasn't cleared, and all of the weapons and all of the booby traps and mines and IEDs that pose a threat to civilians there have also been cleared, so that they can continue with their other diplomatic efforts to solve the Syrian crisis.
Appreciate it, Obeida, as always. Obeida Hito in Sanliurfa.